This podcast contains gambling references. You know the score. Stay in control. Gamble responsibly. Call 1-800-858-858 or your local state gambling helpline.
9 podcasts.
This is Six Tackles with Gus, with Matthew Thompson and Gus Gould.
Hello there, welcome to Six Tackles Grand Final Edition. Grand Final week, best week of the year. Coming up on the show today, we'll go in depth, having a look at the NRL and NRLW Grand Finals. Got a lot of Ask Gus questions as well. Some very good ones here. We'll get a bit of a year in review from Gus as well, a few different categories I'll get him to respond to. But even for an old warhorse like you, I'd imagine Grand Final week still enjoyable for you?
Yeah, it's wonderful. And particularly this year, the Battle of the Gould and West, the heartland of Rugby League, and to see these two clubs rise up over the last decade and get to this point where they play each other in a grand final, I think is wonderful stuff. And I've said a couple of times this week, and I'll say it again, we all have our favourite grand finals in history and favourite memories of grand final day. I think this one will be remembered for a long time, not just for the quality of football we're about to see, but for the fact that it was the Gould and West grand final, Panthers versus Parramatta, which I think will be a beauty.
Yeah. And if the recent clashes between the clubs are any guide, I don't think there'll be much in it. Can we have a Golden Point grand final? Well, extra time then Golden Point?
Yeah, we had one of those a few years ago, didn't we?
Yeah.
Jonathan Thurston broke the deadlock, and that remains a lot of people's favourite grand final. Certainly it's the best in my short memory. But, it's a tight battle on paper, this one. And the fact that they played in a semi-final last year, there's only 2 points of difference. A penalty goal. They played earlier this year. There was only 2 points of difference. Parramatta upset the Panthers at home, the first team to beat them. The second game this year, Parramatta flogged the Panthers, but you remember Nathan Cleary was sent off. I don't think that was going to change the result. I think Parramatta were on top early, and the Cleary thing just exacerbated it. But after a big lead at half-time, Panthers actually performed really well in the second half of that game with only 12 men. And I walked away from that game thinking, well, Parramatta won't beat them again. And that's the way it played out in round one of the final series. Penrith pretty convincing winners over them, I think 27-8 or something like that at Penrith Park. So we'll do a preview shortly, but Parramatta are going to have to be at their absolute very best. It's going to we can't have good Eel this week. It has to be great Eel. They have to rise to a new level.
Yeah. That last game, too, you mentioned, Mitch Moses, of course, left the field, and the scorecard sort of blew away a little bit after that. So maybe there were some extenuating circumstances for that scoreline. Officially a sellout, Gus. I mean, it'd be a travesty if it wasn't.
If we had a 150,000-seat ground, we'd sell that out too.
I reckon we would too, yeah.
Yeah, no, this is going to be a great grand final.
Yeah. Great question here to kick things off from Para Till I Die on Ask Gus. You've mentioned, Gus, that in big Origin games, you liked to create a vision of what winning would look like during the game for the players. What would that visualisation look like for the Eels to win?
For the Eels to win. The Eels play their best when they get on the pace of the game very early. In fact, they run the pace of the game early. They dominate possession early. They force the opposition back. Parramatta's a very free-flowing team. When they've actually got runs of possession, they don't waste it. They're actually trying at you all the time, whether it's Lane on the edge or Mitchell Moses or Dylan Brown or Gutherson from the back. Reid Marnie's very adept at creating tries close to the line. They can kind of be at you all the time, and if you're not really ready, I mean, if Panthers were to start like they did last week against South Sydney, I think they could be chasing an even bigger deficit against the Eels, who are renowned as very quick starters. I think the scenario would be to set the pace of the game, to not wait for Panthers to see what Panthers has to do, but to dominate possession, dominate field position, and not be scared to play football, which I don't think is in Parramatta's DNA. I don't think they'll ever be scared not to move the ball around. That's just the way they play. Panthers are the best defensive team in the competition, and that showed out when they met in the first semi-final. But Parramatta needs some positivity early, and they need to be. I think the one big factor in Parramatta's favour, looking at Parramatta over the years, and even in club matches, Sometimes as favourites, the pressure of expectation just gets to them. There's no expectation here of the Parramatta side. Really, I know it's exciting for the fans and they're all thinking, this could be our first premiership in some time, but Panthers are raging hot favourites. They're the team expected to win. So I think Parramatta can go out here and have a free roll. And by that, I mean they can just go out and be natural. And if they can just not be nervous and not be conservative and not be trying to be perfect, but just get out and play their own brand of football, I think they can, if they got on the board earlier and posted a couple of tries, then it might be hard for the Panthers to dig their way out of it. My scenario would be one of confidence and one of trying to get the opposition to melt under the pressure of favouritism and expectation, and maybe the game not going the way that they want. Don't give Panthers the game that they want. Don't even give Panthers the game that they're expecting. You've got to give a little bit of the unexpected and be prepared to roll the dice a little bit, which I think suits Parramatta's personality. I think that's the team that they like to be. I've spoken a lot about our player ratings and team ratings during the year and that sort of thing. What we can't find this year is 3 consecutive weeks of winning performances. They can have 2 good weeks and then they fail badly the third week. They can have 2 good weeks and they fail badly the third week. Right throughout the season, and we've had 2 premium performances for them in the last couple of rounds where they've won important sudden death finals matches. It would be another step for them, another level if they were to produce winning ratings this weekend against the top side in the competition, the defending premier. So they're in deep water now, Parramatta. This is something they've got to do, something they haven't done all this season, and that is really put 3 premier performances back to back. Usually by the third week, if they have 2 good ones, they fall off the cliff a little bit for the third round, and then they've got to dig themselves up again. But that's all mathematics. It means nothing once they get out there on the knot. Scenario is to be positive, confident, back yourselves, and hope that the opposition melts under the weight of expectation.
Yep. All right. So it's all go out there and do the job, boys. Go and back yourself. That'll be a message.
Well, trust yourself. Yep. Trust everyone around you. Just do it that way. And that suits Parramatta's character. It suits their personality. Conversely, if they get out there and things go wrong early, it could fall apart for them. I don't know if they're resilient enough to handle that if Panthers get to a lead, but I think the Eels have got to lead all the way if they want to get it done.
Hey, what about Brad Arthur? He's made a massive call. He's recalled Nathan Brown for the grand final. I think we've seen him for half a season just about.
No, it's an interesting one. And the mail was at the time that Nathan Brown was left out of the side, that he'd be lucky to get back in. It's interesting that they bring him back after all this time for a grand final. Having said that, I said on 100% footy the other night, the choice between him and a player like Bryce Cartwright, who are 2 very different sort of players with different skill sets and different mentalities, I can find it easier for them to get Nathan Brown in the game than to get Bryce Cartwright into the game. I think if you've got a Bryce Cartwright on your bench, the way he plays these days, you're using him because you need points. You've got behind and you need someone to go out there and spark something a little bit different. And Bryce is quite capable of that. He's a very skillful player. But, if you're 4 in front with 10 minutes to go, is Bryce Cartwright the fella you're going to bring off the bench to steal your defence? Probably not. In the heat of the battle, if they're just marginally in front the whole time, would you be more likely to send a Nathan Brown out there or a Bryce Cartwright? I think the coach has made a positive call here. I think whatever was leaving Nathan Brown out during the course of the season has been brushed aside because he is a big game player. He does have that mentality. He is a tough player, and he's probably looking at the way the game's going to go and who would it be easier to get in the action. Who would easily, I could put him out there at any point of the game and trust that he'll get a job done. And Bryce Cartwright, on the other hand, where do I get him into the game? And if I'm worrying about being 12 behind and needing quick points, well then, that's not the way to be thinking about it anyway. So,
well, he had to come on a lot earlier than he had been up in Townsville because Papali'i was sent for HIA, and I don't think. Remember, I had it in my notes a couple of weeks, but I don't think he's played more than 15 minutes in a game up until that match up in Townsville. So it's a big ask to throw him in early doors because of HIA, and maybe he can go the rest of the game.
Yeah, and it's one thing I've always said too about big games, whether it was Origins or Grand Finals and that. My bench had to be strong. my bench had to be 80-minute players. If someone got hurt in the first minute, we saw that in Origin 3 this year where players were knocking themselves out in minute 1. Well, if you haven't got 80-minute players on the bench, you're going to be caught short. You're going to be found out at some stage. So I liked my bench players to be 80-minute players, even if they only had to play 30 minutes. At least you had the coverage there if you had some early setbacks in the game. And you need a bit of versatility as well. They've got a couple of those Parramatta forwards who could probably fill in the centres if they needed an outside back or a winger. You can move a centre to the wing. So you look at all the options. With my interchange, I'm looking at 20 minutes to go if we're behind on the scoreboard, 20 minutes to go if we're in front on the scoreboard, 10 minutes to go we're behind, 10 minutes to go we're in front. What team do I want out there in those circumstances? And how do I manage my interchange during the game to get to that point, to always have the flexibility that I needed our defensive players out there if we had a lead, or we needed some attacking prowess out there and some skill if we were behind. So you've got to think long and hard, and you've got to be patient about your interchange in big games. You can panic and use a little too many too early and leave yourself short at the back end, or you can get to a point where I imagine it's like managing your bowlers in a one-day game or a T20 game. Who's going to bowl at the death? Who do you want there at the back end if you're in front or you're behind? And that's how I thought about interchange.
Do you make any big selection calls in your grand finals as coach? Can you think of any?
Yeah, look, the big selection call that I made was in 1991 to leave Cartwright and Brad Izzard on the bench rather than starters, because they were starting players, they were quality players, but that was a big call, and we made that sort of a week out from the semi-final. We were first into the grand final. We had a fortnight break, and we were training out at the Army barracks there at Penrith on the Northern Road out there, and we were timing our training session so that it finished around about the time we knew the result in the grand final. We knew it was going to be Canberra, and we went into a meeting there. And John Cartwright had been out spasmodically with back injury, and he had a back problem at the time, and Brad Izzard hadn't played a lot of footy at the back end of the year. He had an injury where he couldn't train. He could play, but he couldn't train. And on that day, as soon as we knew it was Canberra, I said, this is going to be decided in the last 20 minutes. We need to take this down to the back end of the game. And that's what I was thinking. We need our best players on the field at that time. And I thought, well, if we started with an Izzard and a Cartwright and they ran out of par 4, they weren't available at the back end of the game, we were going to be lesser for it. I wanted Izzard and Cartwright on the field at the back end of the game. So I left them off the field for the first 20 minutes. And, John Cartwright was particularly interesting because prior to the grand final every year, they have the prestigious Carbine Club lunch down there with the AJC down at Randwick. And it's always the obligation of the grand final captains and coaches to go and attend the Carbine lunch, and at least it used to be in the old days. We went to a luncheon a few weeks ago. It's not like it was, but and John Cartwright and I went down. John came down as the player representative. Greg Alexander wasn't well, and John Cartwright came down with me, and we drove from Penrith down to Randwick. We went to the luncheon. On the way home, we stopped 3 or 4 times so he could get out of the car and lay down on the side of the road. So bad was his back injury.
Wow. And
there were some tears there because he said, I'm not going to make it. I'm not going to get to the ground. And this is like Thursday afternoon or Friday. I think it was Friday afternoon. Game was on the Sunday. And I said, look, don't panic. You've had a big day. And we sort of got him home and got some physio to him. And he ended up taking his place in the game. But I remember that day distinctly, driving home, and we stopped 3 or 4 times on the way home, twice on the M4 between Parramatta and Penrith, where he got out of the car and had to lay down because he couldn't sit in the car. It was causing his back so much pain. So I knew I had the right idea not to start him and to keep him till later in the contest. And I knew how tough he was, that once he got out there he wouldn't come off. I just wanted to make sure he had the energy levels. And the same with Brad Izzard, who had some ankle or Achilles issues where he was fine to play, but we didn't want to tax him at training during the week. So we saved those 2 big guns. We took a bit of a gamble early, and we saved those 2 big guns, and they both had major contributions in that second half of the Panthers win in 1991. So, I had a couple of big selection calls.
Someone else might have stuck their hand up to go to the luncheon instead of John Cartwright.
Yeah, funny boys.
Why they send him?
Funny boys, Penrith boys.
The other one, look, Penrith's in the grand final, so it's prudent that we go a bit down memory lane in a preview of the grand final. Royce Simmons, whose name, of course, adorns the Eastern Grandstand as one of the Hall of Fame players at Penrith. He dropped him during the year, didn't you? You brought him back for the finals. He was in reserve grade for a while.
Yeah, he spent most of the year in first grade. He only played 5 first grade games that year.
Wow.
Royce, I went to the club in 1990. We made the grand final in 1990, narrowly beaten by Canberra, and I had dropped Royce, Peter Kelly and Peter Tunks during that season too. They were senior players, and earlier in the year things weren't going well, and it was my first year there, and we were sort of just looking to shake things up a little bit and change the style of football. And but Royce forced his way back into the side, certainly long before the semis. But there was always the risk of whether or not he would go around again the following year. And then he trained extremely hard. You've got to give it to Royce. Like, Royce sets his mind to something. He can walk from Antarctica to the moon. Look, he's just one of them blokes. And he set himself on a Spartan campaign that summer and trained extremely well. But, you know, there was an eye on the future, and there was an eye on some other aspects of our game. A young Ben Alexander was making his way into the team as well, and Ben and another player whose name just escapes me, I apologise, my memory's not that great, played the bulk of the year at dummy half, and Royce played a lot of reserve grade. In fact, Royce sort of came to see me one night at the club, and just because we were going really well, we led the minor premiership by 8 points. We were always going to be minor premiers, and we were always going to be very, very hard to beat. And he said, what do you think my chances are? I said, mate, it's a funny game, rugby league. I said, anything could happen. So we're going well at the moment, but you know, there's no guarantees. I said, you know, big games, big players.
What convinced you to bring him back?
I think we were that far ahead in the minor premiership. It was I wasn't taxing them too much with week-to-week football. I was sort of more focusing on our likely opposition comes finals time, which was going to be North Sydney and, of course, the Canberra Raiders. And then probably I think from memory, 3 weeks before the semis, we were beaten by the Sharks at Shark Park, and some of our younger players were just sort of off the pace a little bit. And I remember having a training session where we were going to go out and just find out how tough we were in the training session. And I announced that Royce Simmons would be the first player picked and the only player picked at this time. The rest of them had to earn their spot on the side. And that's virtually how it went. And Royce got a bit of a shock, and everyone else got a bit of a shock. But he went out and led the training session. We won the last 2 games convincingly. Fortnight break, we beat North Sydney. Fortnight break, we beat Canberra, and he scored 2 tries. There's a great story I tell about grand final day in 1991. I used to bring them down into camp at Barker Lodge. Camps for teams in those days wasn't a very common thing at all. We used to do it pretty regularly, but it was Barker Lodge near the University of New South Wales, and we'd get up on the morning of the game and I'd take them for a walk through the university where I went to uni there and have a bit of a stretch, and I'd talk about the footy and get ourselves ready. And Barker Lodge is a motor inn, so everyone drives into your cars outside your room, and it's 2-story. And we were standing on the upstairs balcony early afternoon. Kickoff was 3 o'clock in those days, you know. Or it might have been late morning, and the under-23s grand final had kicked off, and all 3 grades were on TV. All the 3 matches were on TV. So we're sort of standing on the balcony in the nice warm sun and having a bit of a chat, and someone had their bedroom door open and the TV was on, and we could hear the broadcast of the football. And they were not only commentating under-23s game, they were talking about the first grade game coming up. And I'm sure we heard the stat that Mark Bugden was the only hooker to score a try in a grand final, which I found amazing. And he was the only hooker to score, which was 1984 with the Bulldogs. I don't know whether that was correct or not. And Royce looked at me and he said, "What are my chances of scoring a try?" I said, "You're 1,000,000 to 1."
What price is he to score 2?
He said, "I'll have $1 on it."
Oh,
So, as it turned out, he scored a couple of tries. So we were at the club at like 3 o'clock in the morning celebrating, and he came up to me and he said, "You owe me $1,000,000." I said, "Why is that?" He said, "I backed myself to score a try, 1,000,000 to 1. I had $1 on it."
Show me the ticket.
I said, yeah. I said, how many did you score? He said 2. I said, well, that was your mistake.
Oh, I think we'll be taking that one to the administrative tribunal. Yes, very memorable day. First premiership, of course, for the Penrith Club back in 1991. They have a chance on Sunday evening to become the third club in 30 years to defend a title.
Yeah, not easy these days. Yeah.
And, of course, the other stat too, which speaks to the strength of that club. They've won the ball, they've won the flag, and they've won the New South Wales Cup. So if they were to win the first grades, first time ever, a club would have done that. That would be a remarkable achievement.
Absolutely, and deservingly so. I remember when I was the coaching director at the Roosters in the third year, by 2004, we went to the grand final on all 3 days on the one day, in all 3 grades in the one day. We won the under-20s, the Jersey Flag, and we won the Premier League, which is the New South Wales Cup today, and we were beaten by 3 points in the first grade by the Bulldogs, and I said that would have been one of the most remarkable seasons in history, and here they are, the Panthers, some 18 years later, and they're about to complete a complete dominance of all the senior grades in the New South Wales Rugby League and NRL competition. It's a great achievement.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's. In fact, sorry. Before Dally M tonight. So Ben Hunt is everyone's prediction, and I think he was leading when the votes went behind closed doors, as they do. Since then, there's been some great performances at the back end of the year. I saw Ben Hunt actually tipping Nico Hines to win the Dally M. I think they'll be right up there. And Dylan Edwards has been outstanding. I mean, all year, but his performances in the back half of the year have been next level. I'd imagine James Tedesco wouldn't be far away once again. What do you think?
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, in those sort of voting styles that they have for awards like that, if you're playing, a team that's consistently winning and you've got a lot of really good players, votes get shared around a little bit, rather than a Ben Hunt, who's been with a team that's had a mediocre season, but he's probably been the best player in a losing team a lot of times, and he's been the best player when they win. He's usually the reason for it, which is why he accumulates a lot of points, because he doesn't have there are not a lot of other players in the lineup who draw points from the people who judge these types of things. So it gives him an advantage there. But it's generally it lands upon the best, if not one of the best players in the season. I think it's those sort of individual awards are always subjective and up for grabs. But
he'd be a worthy winner, Ben Hunt, wouldn't he?
He's had a great year. He's had a great year, but it's been a benefit to him being in that team at that level, rather than your likes of your Tedescos or Dylan Edwards or Clearys and Mitchell Moses and those players who are in a team with a lot of players that attract points at different times when they win or lose. So, good luck to them. He's had a great year, and he was a star in the Origin too, wasn't he? I still remember that last try he scored, and what a reward that was for many, many years of hard work and some heartache. And it was just a wonderful moment for him, and he'll cap it off for a great year if he can win the major award. Yeah,
and there's a Women's Dally M award, of course. Now, the joint defending winners, Millie Boyle and Emma Tonegato. I actually went on Sunday up at Suncorp. I went down. I did the second of the women's semi-finals, which is the victory by Parramatta to get through. I watched the first one from the sideline, and I don't think I've been down the sideline for years. It was awesome. Like the athleticism and the power, and the emergence of the skill areas of the women's game has been quite remarkable. And it was a great perspective from there on the touchline. But Millie Boyle, she's an unbelievable athlete. I reckon she's right in the frame to defend it. And the other one, of course, is the 17-year-old Jessie Southwell, the halfback. They'll be right up there in the reckoning with the women's.
Yeah, and I think those two girls could well see the Knights win the premiership too on grand final day. So they're very, very good players and certainly dominant. But you're right about the general standard of the game with the women's game. Commented on it a number of times. I think for a lot of them now that are getting more professional coaching and training and opportunity to train more, have improved their skills, their fitness, their strength, their agility, and their timing, their technique, their defensive attributes. It's the standard of the game is rising very, very quickly, and it'll be a very entertaining grand final this Sunday.
Yep, indeed. All right, a little break here on our grand final day preview on Six Tackles with Gus. I've got some more Ask Gus questions coming up and a little year in review before we get to Gus's tips for grand final day, which you will see live and free here on Nine's Wide World of Sports. 1:30pm State Championship Grand Final, Panthers versus North Devils. 3:55 Newcastle versus Para in the NRLW. The pre-game entertainment, Jimmy Barnes. Barnesy.
Thank you.
But you love Barnesy. But
Shouldn't be any more difficult than that.
No.
Just give him a ring. Are you available? Yes, good. Done.
Are you available every year?
Every year.
Yep. The working class man from 6:30. He's got some other mates too are performing. I have to look up who they are. I only care about Barnes.
Don't care.
Yeah. And 7:30 kickoff, Panthers versus Eels. A little break here on Six Tackles with Gus. Gus, in relation to the World Cup, it's not too far away now. I think it's a couple of weeks after Grand Final Day. Joseph Suali'i pledged his allegiance to Samoa. We broke that news during the podcast last week. He's going to play at fullback for the Samoan team. They're in the same pool too as England and Tonga. It's a very competitive pool, that one. But apparently, one of the driving forces behind his decision, apart from it being his country of heritage, was that he wanted to play at fullback. And Brad Boucher asked how you think he'll go there. And Brad also says that they'll beat England and Tonga on their side of the draw, this Samoan team. Very strong outfit.
Yeah, it is a strong outfit. So too is the Tongan team. I'll reserve judgment on the English team. I'm not sure that they're going to be up to do those two Pacific Island nations. I think they'll dominate them. Tonga, of course, beat Australia a couple of years. We haven't had any international football virtually since that time and didn't get enough time to celebrate and capitalise on what a marvellous achievement that was, to have a small Pacific Island nation like Tonga beat the might of the Australian team over there in New Zealand. We called that night. It was an emotional night for the Tongan people and the supporters, and it's going to be marvellous, the World Cup. And I can understand why these players want to play for their country of heritage. Even though some of them are born in Australia, they're not born in the islands, but they still identify as Pacific Island and Pacifica, and it's more to the heritage and to their respect for their elders and parents and grandparents, and that's a very special thing. That's what I mean. You play for the country where when they play the national anthem, you put your hand on your heart and you shed a tear. That's your country. If it's not, then that's you never get that motivated. So I think that it's a great thing, and I think there is a real opportunity for international rugby league, even particularly in this part of the world. England need to get their act together a lot better over there, but in this part of the world, there's great potential around the Pacific Islands, New Zealand, investing in New Zealand, and the number of players that are potentially could play rugby league from that country, and of course New South Wales and Queensland here. We also need to improve our talent identification from other states. Big fellas who can run fast are just not born on the eastern coast of New South Wales and Queensland. They're born all over the world. So we need to look for them, find them, and bring them into our game.
Okay. Brayley M. Of the teams in the bottom four, Tigers, Warriors, Knights and Titans, who has the most potential to be contending for the top 8 next season? Now, I think you're going to tell me none of them will make the 8, but which of those teams do you think can lift next year?
I think the Titans shocked us all a little bit, just about where they finished. I think they're a much better roster than that. I don't know that they would be happy with their season at all. As I've said a number of times, they need to find some defensive focus to go along with their attacking skill. The Warriors, have had a terrible time over the last 3 years, having to relocate a number of times around Australia and not getting home, and finally got back home and put in some nice performances at Mount Smart Stadium there. And I've still got a lot of hope for a lot of the younger blokes they've got in their roster, but it's a hill to climb. Right at the moment, the easier question or the harder question is, you tell me who is in the top 8 that will drop out next year. I just can't see them coming back to the field. The bottom 4 or 5 clubs need some assistance from the top 5 or 6 clubs coming backwards, which I just don't see doing too much.
Well,
that's the problem. That the top the top 8 sides are just so much better than the rest.
Well, if you have a look at it, the Panthers first by as far as they wanted to, but they're going to lose some troops, namely Coruscant and Kickow.
Yeah, but they've got troops coming through. They've won every grade.
The Sharkies are going to be better for what they've done this year as a new combination. The
You would
Cowboys...
I think the way the Sharks finish this year will be great motivation for the off-season. I know personally because I spoke to Craig Fitzgibbon after the game, a couple of days after the game, and he was bitterly disappointed with the way their season finished, particularly the number of points they conceded. So that'll be a major focus for them this off-season. They'll be improved for sure.
Cowboys, for the experience of what they've done this year with the young team, they're going to be a contender for years to come now.
Yeah, play a great brand of football. They really do. They were fit and strong. You know, a lot of talk in recent weeks. You know, when you win, people want to point out the reasons why they did it or what did the Cowboys do differently. And at the moment, they've sparked that they ran up that big hill in the middle of Toowoomba a number of times during the heat. That might have been one factor. It wasn't the only factor, but that's the one they're resting upon. The question is, will they run it again this summer? Will they do it just the same way they did last year, knowing how hard it's going to hurt and what it's going to mean and whether or not that's going to be the difference? They've got some other things they've got to change a little bit to their game, but just with sheer youth, they're going to be a better side next year. So
can you just run us through what they did with that? They call it Castle Hill in Townsville. So what they'd train their backside off, and then the coach would make them run up the hill.
Well, he'd do it a little bit. It's things you read about, like with the training of Special Forces or the US Marines and those sort of things. They talk about expect the unexpected. I remember we had some US Marines come and talk to us during an Origin camp one time, and they talk about when they got to the point of expect the unexpected. It was, you know, they'd marched for like 72 hours across the Middle East looking for a destination, and they were told to set up camp for the next 48 hours. So good, we can set up camp and have a rest and have a sleep and get on the road. And no sooner had they pitched their tents and the orders came through that they had to advance another 30 miles. They had to pull the tents down, put them in their bags, and go again. He said, "You've got to be ready for the unexpected. You've always got to be on your toes." And that's what they were trying to do this summer, was to improve their mental resilience when things didn't go their way or when they were fatigued and had to hang on. So it was kind of like halfway through training sessions, halfway through video sessions or whatever, at inopportune times or when least expected, they would say, "Get your joggers on, run the hill." And sometimes it was in the heat of the day. And if you've been to Townsville in the heat of the day, it's very, very hot. So they're looking back on that as a summer of the hardest things that they did that helped them get the fitness levels that they've got. There was a lot of other stuff that made the Cowboys good. Their style of play, the strategy of their play, the combination of their playmakers and halves, the brilliance of Valentine Holmes and these other finishing players that they've got. So they had a very, very hard-working forward pack. Those two young back rowers, left and right, were both outstanding. So I can't see the Cowboys going backwards. No. It's just that little nagging thing as to whether or not they'll train as hard again this summer, or whether or not, we've done that now, we've got that, it's in the bank, we're right. You know, that's up to the coaches to work out how much they need and don't need. It wasn't the only reason they went good, because they ran that mountain, I can guarantee you.
If I'm on the open market and I'm getting an offer from North Queensland and I know that you finished trading, you've got to run up that hill, I'm thinking again. Put another zero on it and I'll think about it.
Yeah, well, but the other side of that is the one that does put his hand up to go there, you know, you've got the right bloke.
He's the one. Yeah, that's right.
He's the one.
Yeah.
If anyone balks at it, they're not the ones you want.
So the interesting two out of the top 8 for next year, I mean, Parramatta are in a grand final. It's their last throw at the stumps with pretty much the whole forward pack. With the exception of Campbell, Gillard and Poldor. They're going to have to find a new group of forwards there. And Melbourne again. Where do Melbourne get to with the bulk of their forward pack moving on?
Melbourne's going to be interesting, because every year over the last decade, when we thought that they'd lost a couple of players and maybe they were on the slide, it didn't happen. There were certainly cracks around the seams this year and some un-Melbourne-like performances. And to me, you know, I said from a very early stage they won't be playing top 4 and they won't be playing top 4 football, and that's the way it worked out. And now losing a lot of senior players that are moving on. So also conjecture about Cameron Munster, where he'll be the following year. There's going to be contract talks during the off-season, and that can be distracting as well. But he's a master coach. He's absolutely brilliant, Craig Bellamy, and he has a way of replacing these people with people with the right attitude. It's just a lot of experience, a lot of years to come out of it. But if they keep, like they keep Harry Grant and they keep Munster and they keep Jerome Hughes, and there's some concern about Pappenhausen and his return from injury.
Is it?
I'm hearing, so I hope that's untrue. I hope he's going better than that.
Oh.
But he's having some difficulties, and Melbourne's the one I guess we'll all keep an eye on to see how they bounce back. I don't at this stage see them being a top 4 side next year, but you've got to have a lull at some stage. You can't go on forever.
And then, of course, the bottom teams. I mean, Canberra were great towards the back end of the year. I'd imagine that they'd have hopes high going into the summer, and then the perennial top 8 contenders, South Sydney and the Roosters. So, yes, fascinating to see how that all pans out.
Yeah, see, Canberra got through to the final, and they had that massive loss, didn't they? Like, it was just out of nowhere. They suddenly just got belted, blown off the park, and that can be difficult to overcome as well. They're a funny team, Canberra, but it's by the same token, those top 8 teams were the best 8 this year, and it's hard to see just who's going to jump out of the pack to maybe replace one of those, or whether or not they'll come backwards to make themselves vulnerable. But you never know. It's a long time. We've got the Rugby League World Cup to get through. It'll be a tiring season for our very best players that play in that competition, and they don't come back to training until after Christmas. They'll have a very short preparation leading into next year, which is ridiculous. I can never understand the Players Association for insisting on all of this. I find that all ridiculous. They should leave it to the experts and to the players themselves to get the training they need but they must have this amount of time off, or it must have this amount of holidays. There's no holidays when you're a professional footballer. That's the gig. And I think it's going to be to the detriment of players that aren't coming back till after Christmas, trying to prepare for trial games in February and for the competition to start earlier in March than it is, and get through another long season next year. What have we got? What are they proposing? 25 rounds or something next year?
Is it a 27?
27 rounds or something next year. Yeah. So but don't start me on all of that, because I find it all very, very ridiculous, and that's what's holding up. Do you know, as professional game, we still even don't know what the salary cap's going to be for next year. We should know what the salary cap's going to be for the next 5 years, and we should have known it 5 months ago. Like, I don't know how they expect clubs to plan and do their work when we're held up by this ridiculous negotiating process every time there's a CBA to negotiate. It's just it's blackmail.
All right, Gus, year in review time. I'm going to fire some at you here. Let's see if we can remember that far back.
Year in review, am
Yeah.
I? Okay.
Best individual performance of 2022.
Best individual performance of 2022 by a player.
Who played the best game? Individual player.
The best individual performance by a player. I think the most memorable for me is Nathan Cleary in the first round of the semis after 5 weeks out with suspension, and everyone doubting whether or not he'd be fit enough or ready enough, and he just came in and tore Parramatta, tore him apart. I think that's as fine of individual performance as I've seen.
Cameron Munster threw a couple of beauties in.
He did. But, I'm looking at probably against the odds and maybe doubted going in, but he certainly delivered on the night.
Best young player of the year.
Gee whiz.
Not rookie.
No.
What about the player that announced himself as someone who's...
I think everyone's got excited about the likes of Selwyn Cobbo and what he's been done, although at the back end of the year it sort of fell apart for him a little bit.
Joseph Suaalii,
yes. No doubt he's a talent, still so young. Got a lot of football in front of him. Whether it's not in the NRL or not, I don't know. But, he's obviously genetically blessed and a very special kid.
Best game of the year.
Best game of the year, Origin 3. I loved that. Didn't like the result, but I loved the contest.
Best player of 2022, Gus.
Yeah, it's a hard one. Best player of 2022. I think for sheer consistency and influence on his team and leadership, and doing so with a humility and without any fanfare as a CIO. I think he's been absolutely mighty for the Panthers this year, and a tick in front of James Fisher-Harris, who has also been absolutely mighty for him. But Asai Yeo does so much for that team with his ball craft and everything, as well as the hard work that he does. Remember, I don't think he's ever missed a game through injury, and he played all the Origins, and his team is now defending premiers, and they're in the grand final again. And out of all the players in that team that might change things for them if he was missing, I think it's Asai. I think he's one that's been absolutely outstanding. And I tend to look at forwards when I think about that. There have been some other really good individual performances, but the one that stands out is for Asai Yeo is mine.
I like that. There's our headline. Best player of 2022 according to Phil Gould, Isaiah Yeo. Ments. Cameron Murray's had a great year. Who else? There's a few contenders, isn't there?
Yeah, but they were all eventually beaten by the
Mitch
Panthers.
Moses, yeah.
I think for sheer influence on his team and the importance of him to the team and his consistent performance, and I can't ever remember him having a bad day. Not even a bad half. Like, he's just so consistently good and reliable, and I know what he means to the rest of the team.
All right, let's have a look at grand final day. Now, state championship final. Great to have it back. We obviously missed it for a little while. Mainly because of COVID, of course, but Panthers versus North's Devils. Now, the Panthers squeaked past Canterbury in the grand final.
Yeah, Bulldogs put up a really good fight. A good side, the Penrith side. Remember, last round of the NRL, where Panthers rested all their NRL players, they sent that reserve grade side up to play against the Cowboys in Townsville. Final score was, 38-12 or 16 or something like that, but Panthers reserve grade gave a really good account of themselves and set themselves up for what they did. They went through to the grand final. They won 3 games and won the grand final. Bulldogs really tested them all the way and were unlucky in the last moments. Had a try disallowed by the bunker in the final minute there that could have got it even back to a 1-point game. But to be denied, and Panthers deserved their premiership victory, and they'll be extremely hard to beat on Sunday.
All right, now the NRL Telstra Women's Premiership Grand Final, Newcastle Knights versus Parramatta Eels. Now, these were the two teams that really struggled last year, but they have turned their respective fortunes right around. The influential players for Newcastle, I mentioned Millie Boyle, that Tamika Upton, she is dynamite at fullback. She is blistering. So 2 shrewd recruitments, and obviously Jessie Southwell's been immense in her maiden campaign, 17 years of age. So they're the 3 chief protagonists for Newcastle, up against Parramatta, who only squeaked into the finals on for and against after beating Brisbane. Yeah. And they just blew the Roosters away on the weekend.
Well, I know it was a big scoreline, but they beat them with their defence. The Roosters were favourites, premiership favourites, and expected to win comfortably. And Parramatta Eels just turned up and really ambushed them with some great defence. And it was a very impressive performance. Can they do that 2 weeks in a row? I think the Newcastle Knights are the best side, and strong up front, strong in the halves, and as you say, the fullback. I think they'll be too good for Parramatta. I just doubt whether the Parramatta girls can come up with another physical defensive performance like that again this weekend. I think Newcastle will have too much skill.
All right. What's Jimmy Barnes going to sing first? What's he going to open up with, Barnesy?
Don't know.
What would you open up with? You were Barnesy. Imagine if Gus was Barnesy. That'd be great.
Driving Wheels.
Driving Wheels?
Ooh. I used to have a tape that I used to train to in the gym at home, and I always started with that song.
Yeah? Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. I reckon Working Class Man.
No, that'll be his last.
Yeah?
Yeah. That'll be his last.
KCN will be his last.
You reckon?
Yes, of course. Flame Trees? Do you play Flame Trees on Grand Final night?
Flame Trees is a good song, but probably not for Grand Final night.
All right, well, whatever it is, it's going to be great. And then we get to the feature game, of course, the Penrith Panthers against the Parramatta Eels on BlueBet as of 11 a.m. on September 28. I just had it here, and I've closed the app. $1.35 favourites, the Panthers. $3.20 Parramatta. How do you see... Take me through how you see the game evolving, and then you can give me a winner and a score and a Clive Churchill medal.
Oh, crikey.
They've been a bit slow out. It's been a trend for Penrith. They've they've conceded the first try on a number of occasions over the last month or so.
Yeah, remember they had a fortnight off leading into the first semi-final because they rested their players for the final round.
Mm.
They then had a fortnight off leading into South Sydney, and I don't think any other team in the competition would have got out of that. South Sydney bouncing to a 12-0 lead like that under the circumstances they were, and then Panthers had several opportunities. They'd a fair try disallowed for mine, and that's been reported as correct, and other opportunities that just went begging and could easily have been thinking, a lesser team thinks, well, it's not going to be our night, and South Sydney rise to that. But when you looked at the game by the end of it, Panthers could have won by 40 or 50. It could have been a really big scoreline for them. So to turn that around both mentally and physically and then get back into their rhythm. And it was difficult conditions out there. The field was in perfect shape, but there was a fair bit of dew and it had rained during the afternoon and it was quite moist. These players are so brilliant. People don't get it. But it's difficult playing at night, late at night. When you get to this time of year and you're playing at 8 o'clock at night, it's a real test for the players. Unless there's a breeze to take that moisture off the top of the ground, the ball is slippery and everything is a bit harder. And South Sydney did really well early. Sometimes we can say Panthers started slow. It just could have been that South Sydney started great and put a lot of pressure on them, which Panthers accepted and ground their way back into it and ended the way running convincingly. I think that there is no scenario that I can see where Panthers lose this game. I think they've got it all covered. Their win percentage over the last 3 years has been amazing. They'll just go out and keep doing it. I think that hard game against South Sydney last week was exactly what they needed after only one game in a month. Parramatta have come the tough route. They've had to play all 3 weekends leading into this. They've been in sudden death mode. And they had to play in the heat last week in Townsville, and it was a very emotional thing for them. You can see the noise and the circus going on around them now. Parramatta's back in the grand final and chance to win a premiership since 1986. And, it's all the stories are coming out. It can be very distracting for them. And to come up even physically and mentally and be ready to go, I can see Parramatta starting with a whole burst of energy and emotion and excitement. And, if it goes good for them, well, then it might be a different game. But if it doesn't, if the Panthers repel them and their defence is in order and they can keep themselves on the scoreboard very close after 20 minutes, then I just think the Panthers' power and consistency and the kicking game of Cleary, the forwards, Fisher Harris, Moses Leota, Liam Martin, kick out, Messiah will just keep wearing away. I don't know whether they'll start with Api Coruscant on the bench again. That, you could say that maybe that was one of the reasons why it backfired a little bit early last week. Having said that, they've done it regularly. They like to keep him out of the firing line in the early stages of the game. Opposition teams tend to target him in the first 20 minutes, try and get him up to 25 tackles and try to take away his energy. It's worked for them in the past, and they will, it'll be interesting to see whether they get spooked by what happened last week or whether they stick to their system and say, no, we'll keep him out of the fray early on. We'll wait till Campbell Gillard and Borlo are sort of getting tired and ready to come off the field and then get him out there to get us on the front foot. I don't see a scenario where Panthers lose, to be honest. I can paint a picture where Parramatta might get on the front foot and run to a 12-16-0 lead and then hang on, but even then, I don't think 12 or 16 is going to be enough. I see Panthers somewhere in the range of 26 to 30 points and, Parramatta lucky to get a dozen, I suppose, is where I see the grand final.
Yeah.
In the most likely scenario.
Wow. Okay. Well, you've been bullish about them all year, and you're doubling down.
Yeah, and statistically too, like Parramatta are yet to put 3 in a row, and they've just had 3, knockdown, drag 'em out finals matches, and coming back for that game last week added all the heat and the noise around this grand final. I hope the good Parramatta turns up. Whether good Parramatta is going to be enough, I don't know. It needs to be great Parramatta. And I know Parramatta's personality and I know their character and I know their DNA of this team. They will come out with a rush. It will be a whole rush of emotion and passing and physicality early in the game. And they will really come at Panthers. And they get a few penalties and a few 6 agains, or they get a couple of line dropouts, or they can score and then come back to back. And, they can get on a real roll with teams. And they've done it to Panthers a couple of times this year. They can get on a real roll. And then it's up to Panthers to dig their way out of that again. But I just think after last week's really hard game, I think it steals the Panthers perfectly. I think after what happened in the early stages last year, that will be the strength of their defensive commitment this week. They'll be sure to get their share of possession. They'll make sure that they're not conceding points early. And it'll be close. It'll be close. It'll be close. It'll be closer. But it'll be close because Penrith keep it that way until they decide to assert their authority and run away at the end. So I can see them with 4 or 5 tries, and I can see Parramatta with 1, maybe 2, 3 if they score off a kick. But that's kind of where I see it.
Okay. And could Nathan Cleary win back-to-back Clive Churchill medals?
I think if Penrith win, he'll be the logical choice.
I'm not sure that's ever been done before, has it?
Don't know. There's been some good publicity around Dylan Edwards, who's really getting recognised now for all the hard work that he does, and Asai Yeo, he wins in the shadows. The forwards just do their work. It's called winning the game in the shadows. You're in there where people aren't really looking at it. They're looking for the fancy plays and the fancy players and the big passes and kicks and long-range tries and all that. But you win grand finals in the shadows where people aren't allowed to go. Only the ones that deserve to be there, and the 2 forward packs will sort this out. And I just think that Panthers will finish on top there.
Well, there you have it. There's Gus's summation for grand final day. Before we go, Harry Callaghan. Well done, Matt and Gus, on your finals predictions. Pretty much nailed all of it. Very impressive. Can't wait for the grand final and to see if your prediction comes to fruition. Thanks for the season of 6 tackles. Thank you for the season of 6 tackles, Gus. And I look forward to being out there with you on grand final day. And I've got the great pleasure of calling my first one for the network here.
Yeah,
so
I'm
very excited.
I'm sure that'll go very, very well. And don't forget, on Friday night, we've got our Ray Warren special.
Yes.
So when you're looking for a bit of football on Friday night, it's the first Friday of the year. We haven't had any football. We've got the great Ray Warren and all the people he's been associated with and called. There'll be a lot of people making comment and telling a lot of old stories, but admiring the greatness of Ray Warren. And he'll be there Friday night, and I think it's a great accolade. And congratulations to you getting the grand final this. And I hope there's many more to come, mate. You'll do a good job.
Did you? What yarn did you spin about Rabs?
I told a few, but they won't make the cut.
Why not?
They'll be on the cutting room floor.
Oh, please.
Well,
I hope you got the helicopter story.
It's in prime time, mate. Mine will be on the late show.
That'll be.
We'd have to put my version midnight to dawn.
The after hours.
To give all the stories a run with Rabs.
All right. See you Sunday.
Take care.
That's 6 tackles with Gus for the season. Hope you have a great day on grand final day. Make sure you watch all the action here. Live and free on 11 o'clock Sunday footy show out there, and we're right through until the end of all the action. Enjoy grand final day.
You know the score. Stay in control. Gamble responsibly. Call 1-800-858-858 or your local state gambling helpline.